Trudeau government would like us to have an honest conversation about the history of slavery in our country. And yet, Trudeau officials themselves aren't even being honest with Canadians about the basic facts when it comes to our history. First, check out this tweet from the Minister of Infrastructure, Catherine McKenna. She writes, "Today is Emancipation Day. On August 1st, 1834, slavery was abolished in Canada. We need to keep having honest discussions about our past in order to build a more inclusive Canada free of racism and discrimination." First, it's a little rich to hear from McKenna and hear her talk about wanting to build a, quote, more inclusive Canada, given that she's the one with the bad habit of pitting Canadians against each other and dismissing her critics, calling them deniers, racists, bigots, etc. Remember this interview when she said she didn't have time for Canadians who she disagreed with?
Let's be clear, climate change has huge costs now. I have no time for folks who are we shouldn't take action.
Second, yes, August 1st is Emancipation Day across the entire Commonwealth, where we acknowledge and even celebrate the fact that the British Empire was the first to take the remarkable step in 1834 to abolish slavery throughout the empire. It was 40 years before the American Civil War and leaps and bounds before other countries and other cultures finally took the step to abolish the despicable slave trade. Great Britain showed tremendous leadership during that era to end a deeply egregious and immoral practice. McKenna should acknowledge that 1 month earlier, July 1st, we celebrate Dominion Day, honoring the creation of the Dominion of Canada in 1867. Slavery was abolished in the British Empire in 1834. Canada was created in 1867. Therefore, there was no slavery technically that ever happened in Canada. Sure, that's semantics, but it's McKenna herself who's saying that we should have an honest conversation. She should also include the facts if she wants to have an honest conversation. Now, McKenna was not the only Liberal pushing this division and revisionist history, trying to make all Canadians look bad. Parks Canada's official Twitter handle also claimed that Canadians were complicit in slavery. They tweeted this: "Between 1629 and 1834, approximately 4,000 people of African descent were enslaved across Canada. This left a legacy of discrimination and systemic racism that Black Canadians still feel today. Learn more about this shameful period in our history," and it includes a link that goes to a press release where a bunch of Liberal cabinet ministers and officials are basically condemning Canada and saying how awful of a country we are. Well, of course, this was a shameful period in world history. And keep in mind that it was world history. The slave trade spanned across the entire globe and included slaves and slaveholders from all different races. But here in Canada, these Liberal officials left out a few very important and very relevant details. For instance, on August 1st, 1793, Upper Canada, the territory that's now known as Ontario, the governor, John Graves Simcoe, issued the Act Against Slavery, banning the import of slaves and providing freedom to the children of slaves. In fact, Upper Canada was the very first British colony in the entire world to ban slavery, a remarkable sign of leadership at the time. Canadians should, of course, be aware that there was slavery here before Canada became a country, but the story is far more complicated than these banal messages from Liberal officials suggest. While historians do believe that there was a total of about 4,000 enslaved people in New France, which became British North America, which became Canada, Parks Canada is wrong to say that there are 4,000 people of African descent enslaved here. I've looked through a lot of records, I've looked at a lot of historical accounts, and every record I saw that showed that 4,000 figure said it applied to all slaves in Canada, and the majority of slaves in this territory were Indigenous. Only a small fraction were of African descent. It's important to note that slavery was common practice among First Nation tribes before Europeans arrived in North America. They used to take prisoners of war. They were either killed or they were kept as slaves. And also, compare that total of 4,000 slaves that were held in New France and British North America. Compare that to what happened in the 19th century in Canada. Canada was refuge to 20 times that many freed slaves who left the United States, fled the United States, came to Canada through the Underground Railroad. As many as 100,000 Africans, former slaves, found freedom in Canada because of this remarkable network. So sure, there are aspects of our history that are shameful and we should acknowledge that. But there are also many things to be proud of. Instead of sowing division and trying to push misinformation about Canada's past, the Trudeau government should brush up on its own history, learn the facts, and stop hectoring Canadians with their divisive, anti-Canadian, woke rhetoric. For True North, I'm Candice Malcolm.